We spend our lives looking at the stars, wondering what's out there. But we often forget that there is a world right here on Earth that is just as alien, just as cold, and far more lethal. It's a place where the rules of humanity don't apply, and once it claims you, it never lets go. Welcome back to Veil of Crime. Tonight, we step into the mystery of the Sodder children. 1945. Christmas Eve. For most families, it was a night of warmth, a night of celebration, a night spent around glowing trees and crackling fireplaces. Children laughed, parents relaxed. The world seemed peaceful. But high in the hills of Fayetteville, West Virginia, one family was about to enter a nightmare from which they would never truly wake. And nearly 80 years later, no one can say with certainty what happened, because this isn't just the story of a house fire, it's the story of 5 children who vanished without a trace. The question has haunted generations. Did they perish in the flames? Or were they taken right before the fire began? This is the mystery of the Sodder children. The Sodder family seemed like the embodiment of the American dream. The father, George Sodder, an immigrant from Italy, a man who arrived in America with almost nothing and built a successful trucking business through sheer determination. By the 1940s, George was well known throughout Fayette County. Hardworking, respected, outspoken, a man who wasn't afraid to say exactly what he thought. His wife, Jenny Sodder, kind, devoted, the center of a large and bustling household. Together, they were raising 10 children, a noisy family, a happy family, the kind of family where there was always someone talking, someone laughing, someone running through the house. The Sodder home stood on a hillside overlooking the town, large, comfortable, filled with life. And on Christmas Eve, filled with excitement, because Christmas morning was only hours away. The children had spent the evening opening gifts, admiring new toys, playing games, enjoying the holiday spirit. The youngest children were especially excited. 9-year-old Martha, 8-year-old Louie, 5-year-old Betty, and their older siblings, 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Jenny, 9-year-old Martha, 8-year-old Louie, and 5-year-old Betty. They wanted to stay up, like children always do on Christmas Eve. George eventually went to bed. Jenny followed later. Some of the older children stayed awake. The younger ones continued playing downstairs. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing seemed wrong. There was no warning, no sign, no indication that the coming hours would become one of America's most enduring mysteries. Then, at approximately 12:30 a.m., the telephone rang. Jenny answered. The caller was a woman she didn't recognize. The voice sounded strange. There was laughter in the background, glasses clinking, party noises. The woman asked for someone who didn't live there, a completely unfamiliar name. Jenny told her she had the wrong number. The caller laughed, then hung up. It was odd, but not alarming. Jenny returned to bed. As she walked through the house, she noticed something unusual. The downstairs lights were still on. The curtains remained open. The front door wasn't locked. The children who had been awake were nowhere in sight. She assumed they had finally gone upstairs to sleep. So she locked the door, turned off the lights, and returned to her room. She would later remember that moment for the rest of her life, because it was the last normal moment she would ever have. Less than an hour later, Jenny woke suddenly. A loud sound echoed through the house, a heavy thud, as though something had struck the roof. Then silence. She listened. Nothing. The house was quiet. Again. She assumed it was nothing and drifted back to sleep, but only briefly, because at around 1 a.m., she woke once more, this time to the smell of smoke. At first, confusion, then realization, then terror. Flames were spreading through the house, fast, far too fast. George woke instantly. The family scrambled into action, parents shouting, children crying, smoke filling the rooms. The fire was already consuming large portions of the home. Every second mattered. George and Jenny desperately gathered whoever they could find. One child, then another, then another. Chaos. Pure chaos. The kind that makes minutes feel like seconds, and seconds feel like nothing at all. Eventually, some family members escaped. George, Jenny, several of the older children. They stood outside in the freezing darkness, watching their home burn, watching flames consume everything they owned. Then came the realization, the horrifying realization. 5 children were missing. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, Betty, still inside. Or so it seemed. George refused to accept it. His children were in there, and he was going back, no matter what. He ran toward the house. But flames blocked the entrance. The staircase had already collapsed. The fire was too intense, too powerful, too fast. He needed another way, a ladder. And there was always a ladder leaning against the house. George ran to retrieve it. But when he reached the spot where it was normally kept, the ladder was gone, completely gone. At the worst possible moment, the ladder had vanished. Desperate, George tried another plan. His work trucks were parked nearby. He would drive one next to the house, climb onto the roof, and rescue the children himself. It was dangerous, but he had no choice. He jumped into the first truck. Nothing. The engine wouldn't start. He tried the second. Nothing. Both trucks had worked perfectly the day before. Now, neither would start. The fire continued raging, the children remained trapped, and George could do nothing but watch. The family called the fire department again and again. No answer. The town's phone system relied on a local operator. For reasons still debated today, the emergency call never reached firefighters in time. Neighbors saw the blaze. Some tried to help. Others attempted to contact authorities. But precious minutes passed. Then more minutes. Then even more. The fire continued unchecked. By the time firefighters finally arrived, hours had passed. Not minutes, hours. The house was gone, reduced to ashes, reduced to rubble, reduced to silence. The official explanation seemed straightforward. 5 children had died in the fire. A tragic accident, nothing more, nothing less. The case should have ended there. Most people would have accepted it. Most people would have mourned. Most people would have moved on, but George and Jenny Sodder were not most people. Because almost immediately, they noticed things that didn't make sense, things that shouldn't have happened, things that transformed a terrible tragedy into a mystery that remains unsolved to this very day. Because as investigators sifted through the ashes, one question emerged. A question so simple and yet so disturbing. If 5 children truly died in that fire, then where were the bodies? In the next chapter, the investigation begins, and the evidence starts raising more questions than answers. A cut phone line, a missing ladder, a mysterious truck, and strange warnings that George Sodder had received. Before the fire ever started, the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the story became, and the possibility emerged that the missing children may never have been inside that burning house at all. When the sun rose over Fayetteville, the Sodder home was gone. The fire had consumed nearly everything: charred wood, twisted metal, blackened debris. The place where laughter had filled the rooms only hours earlier now looked like a graveyard. And according to officials, 5 children had died there. Case closed. Or so they believed. But George Sodder wasn't convinced. Not even close. Because almost immediately, something felt wrong. Terribly wrong. The official investigation moved quickly, perhaps too quickly. Fire officials examined the ruins. Their conclusion was simple: the children had perished in the blaze. The intense heat had destroyed the remains. A tragic accident. Nothing suspicious, nothing mysterious, just bad luck. But George had questions. Questions nobody seemed eager to answer. The first question was obvious. Where were the bodies? 5 children, 5 human beings, gone without a trace. No complete skeletons, no identifiable remains. Nothing. Investigators claimed the fire had burned so hot that the bodies had been completely destroyed. At first, that explanation sounded reasonable, but the more George thought about it, the less sense it made. Later, experts would point out something important. Even in extremely intense fires, human bones usually leave traces, fragments, teeth, something. Yet investigators found almost nothing. How could 5 children vanish so completely? How could an entire family disappear inside a burning home without leaving evidence behind? The question lingered, and it only became more troubling with time. Then there was the phone line. Remember that strange call Jenny received? The wrong number, the unfamiliar voice, the laughter in the background. At first, it seemed meaningless, just another odd detail from a chaotic night. But investigators soon discovered something shocking. The telephone line had not burned in the fire. It had been cut, not damaged, not melted. Cut. Deliberately, someone had physically severed it, which meant the family's ability to call for help may have been disabled before the fire even began. Suddenly, the fire no longer looked like an accident. Suddenly, it looked planned. Then came the ladder. George knew exactly where he kept it. Every day, every week, every month. The ladder always leaned against the house. Yet when the fire started, it was gone. Vanished. Days later, the ladder was discovered. Not beside the home, not nearby, but in an embankment some distance away. Someone had moved it. The question was simple. Why? And more importantly, who? Then there were the trucks. George never forgot that moment, running desperately toward his work vehicles, trying to save his children, only to discover neither would start. Both had been functioning normally, yet during the fire, both failed. Investigators later suggested mechanical issues, bad luck, coincidence. But George wasn't buying it. Too many coincidences were beginning to pile up. Too many things had gone wrong. At exactly the right moment. As rumors spread through town, witnesses began coming forward, and what they reported would only deepen the mystery. One witness claimed to have seen a man near the Sodder property before the fire. A stranger, watching the house, observing, waiting. At the time, nobody thought much of it. After the fire, everything changed. Another witness reported seeing someone tampering with the family's phone line. Again, the account wasn't taken seriously, at least not initially. But when investigators confirmed the line had been cut, the statement suddenly seemed far more important. And then came the most chilling sighting of all. A woman claimed she had seen the missing children. Not before the fire, after. According to her account, the children were inside a passing vehicle, looking alive, looking unharmed, traveling away from Fayetteville. She couldn't prove it. Authorities couldn't verify it. But the report echoed a fear already growing inside George and Jenny. What if the children hadn't died? What if they had been taken? At first, that idea sounded impossible. How could someone abduct 5 children from a burning house? How could they escape unnoticed? How could such a massive crime leave so little evidence? But the more questions the family asked, the stranger the answers became. Then George remembered something that had happened weeks before Christmas, something he had initially dismissed. A visitor had appeared at the house, a man he didn't know. The stranger examined the property, then pointed toward the electrical box and made a disturbing statement. He told George that the house was going to burn and that his children would be destroyed. The words seemed absurd at the time, almost insane. George ignored them. But after the fire, those words became impossible to forget. How could a stranger predict such a tragedy? Was it a coincidence, a threat, or something much darker? The answer may lie in another part of George's life, a part that rarely appears in the headlines: his politics. George Sauter was born in Italy, and he had strong opinions about the political situation there, particularly regarding Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. George criticized him openly, frequently, and passionately. Not everyone appreciated those views. Arguments were common. Tempers sometimes flared. According to some accounts, George had made enemies, powerful enemies, loyalists who viewed his criticism as betrayal. Could the fire have been revenge? Could the disappearance of the children have been connected to those disputes? No one knows, but investigators would eventually consider the possibility. As weeks turned into months, the official case remained unchanged. Authorities insisted the children died in the fire. End of story. But the Sauters refused to accept it. They couldn't. Not with so many unanswered questions. Not with so many contradictions. Not with so much missing evidence. Then came another shock. Investigators eventually located what they believed were human remains. A few bone fragments, tiny pieces. The discovery seemed to support the official conclusion. For a moment, it appeared the mystery might finally be over. But once again, the evidence created more confusion, not less. Experts who later examined the fragments raised serious concerns. Some suggested the bones showed little evidence of having been exposed to the intense heat expected from the fire. Others questioned whether the remains belonged to the missing children at all. The findings were controversial, conflicting, uncertain. And uncertainty became the defining feature of the case. Every answer generated new questions. Every clue seemed to point in two directions at once. One path led toward tragedy, the other toward conspiracy. For George and Jenny, the choice was clear. Their children were alive. They believed it with every fiber of their being, and they were prepared to spend the rest of their lives proving it, no matter the cost. No matter how long it took, no matter who doubted them. Because the next chapter of this story isn't about grief. It's about a search that would last decades. A search that would turn a family into investigators. A search that would produce one of the most haunting photographs in American mystery history. A photograph that seemed to suggest that one of the missing children had survived and was trying, against all odds, to come home. Most families eventually stop searching, not because they want to, because they have to. Grief has a way of wearing people down. Years pass, memories fade, life moves forward. But for George and Jenny Sodder, life stopped on Christmas Eve, 1945. Every morning began with the same question. Every night ended with the same question. Where were their children? The official investigation was over. Authorities considered the case closed. But the Sodders were only getting started. If nobody else would search, they would. And so began one of the longest private investigations in American history. They followed every lead, every rumor, every phone call, every letter, every alleged sighting, no matter how unlikely, no matter how far away. Because somewhere beneath the confusion, they believed there was a truth waiting to be uncovered, and every year that passed only strengthened that belief. Then the sightings began. Not one, not two, dozens. Reports arrived from multiple states, different towns, different witnesses, different stories. Yet many described the same thing. Children resembling the missing Sodders. Children who appeared frightened. Children who seemed to be traveling with unfamiliar adults. One woman claimed she saw several of the missing children shortly after the fire. They were inside a vehicle, accompanied by adults she didn't recognize. The children appeared alive, healthy, not injured, not burned, alive. Another witness reported seeing children matching their descriptions at a roadside hotel, according to the account. Several adults checked in late at night. The children remained unusually quiet, almost as if they had been instructed not to speak. The witness found the behavior strange. At the time, she had no idea she might be looking at children presumed dead. Years later, another report surfaced. A woman operating a tourist stop claimed she had served a group that included children resembling the missing Sodders. Again, the children appeared nervous, closely monitored, watched constantly by the adults accompanying them. None of these accounts could be proven, none could be verified beyond doubt. But there were so many of them, too many for George and Jenny to ignore. Then came one of the most extraordinary decisions of the entire case. A giant billboard. Most people had never seen anything like it. Towering above a highway, impossible to miss. The billboard displayed photographs of the missing children alongside a reward offer. The message was simple: help us find them. Year after year, drivers passed beneath it. Thousands of people saw those faces. Thousands learned their names. The billboard became more than an advertisement. It became a symbol, a declaration. The Sodders were not giving up. Not now, not ever. As the years rolled on, the mystery spread far beyond West Virginia. Newspapers picked up the story. Investigators debated the evidence. Amateur detectives joined the search. The case evolved from a local tragedy into a national obsession, and then, decades after the fire, a single envelope arrived. No return address, no explanation, no warning, just a photograph. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. A young man, dark hair, dark eyes, sitting calmly, nothing unusual, nothing remarkable, until George and Jenny looked closer. The man looked astonishingly similar to one of their missing sons, Louis Sodder. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The shape of the face, the eyes, the expression. Even certain family traits appeared unmistakable. But it wasn't just the photograph. There was also a message, a cryptic message, short, mysterious, and deeply unsettling. The note appeared to identify the man as Lewis, now grown, now older, now living somewhere far away. No sender, no explanation, nothing else. Just a photograph and a possibility. For George and Jenny, this wasn't merely evidence, it was hope. Perhaps the strongest hope they had received in decades. They immediately launched a new effort to locate the man. Investigators examined the image. Experts studied it. Friends compared facial features. The family searched desperately for answers, but once again, the trail went cold. No one could determine who mailed the photograph. No one could locate the man. No one could confirm the claims. The mystery remained intact. Yet the image changed everything, because now there was something tangible, something physical, a face, a possibility, a glimpse into a future that wasn't supposed to exist. And so the theories continued, growing larger with every passing year. Some believed the children died in the fire. The simplest explanation, the official explanation, a tragic accident followed by confusion and grief. Supporters of this theory argue that the fire consumed the evidence, that witnesses were mistaken, that hope a clouded judgment, that desperate parents simply couldn't accept the loss. Others disagree strongly. They point to the cut phone line, the missing ladder, the failing trucks, the strange warnings before the fire, the sightings afterward, the absence of convincing remains, the mysterious photograph. And they ask a simple question: how many coincidences are too many? Some investigators believe the children were kidnapped, removed from the home before or during the fire, then transported elsewhere, perhaps under new identities, perhaps raised by others, perhaps told never to return. But why? Why target the Soter family? One theory points toward George's outspoken criticism of Mussolini. Another suggests organized criminal involvement. Others believe the motive may have been personal, a grudge, a vendetta, a warning. And yet, no theory answers every question. No theory explains every detail. Each solves one piece of the puzzle, while creating another. That is what makes the Soter mystery so enduring. Not the fire, not the disappearance, but the uncertainty. Because uncertainty is powerful. It leaves room for imagination, room for possibility, room for hope. As the decades passed, the Soter family never stopped searching, never stopped asking questions, never stopped believing, even as the world moved on, even as witnesses passed away, even as memories faded. George Soter died without answers. Jenny Soter died without answers. But neither abandoned the search, not for a single day. Imagine what that feels like, to spend 40 years wondering, 40 years questioning, 40 years looking at empty chairs, empty bedrooms, empty spaces at the dinner table, and never knowing. Were the children victims of a tragic fire? Or did they survive? Did they grow up somewhere else? Did they have families of their own? Did they remember their parents? Did they ever try to come home? No one knows. Today, the Soter house is gone. The flames are long extinguished. Most of the witnesses are gone. Most of the evidence has disappeared. The mystery has become history. And yet, the questions remain, waiting, unanswered, unresolved. Perhaps the truth died in that fire. Perhaps it traveled away in the darkness that night. Perhaps someone carried it to the grave. Or perhaps someone somewhere still knows exactly what happened. A brother, a sister, a witness, a participant, a survivor, until that truth emerges. The Sodder children remain among America's greatest mysteries. 5 children, 1 fire, countless questions, and a story that refuses to disappear. Because some mysteries are solved, some mysteries are forgotten, but the most haunting mysteries stay alive, waiting, silent, patient, like embers beneath the ashes, still glowing, still burning, still asking the same question. What really happened to the Sodder children?